viewers, today we'll continue our discussion on generating project ideas. Let's recall that generating project ideas came out of our discussion on the project initiation as a key factor for project success. That we started in the last episode. And in that episode, we started our discussion on project idea. How do you conceptualize? I have a dream. I conceive a project idea. How? On what basis? So we tried to establish this basis, particularly focusing on property developments, considering the position of investors in property developments. And incidentally, we identified likely scenarios that investor can face, irrespective of the project objectives. One of the scenarios would be that there is a site in search of a use. We explained that that's a situation where there is land already available, and now the investor is thinking of what use will bring optimum return, with emphasis on optimum return. We equally, out of the three scenarios, identify a case of a use in search of a site. A use in search of a site. And equally, we identify a case of an investment. Capital in search of use and site. Capital in search of use and site. So, in our last episode, we have discussed the first scenario, which is the scenario of a site in search of a use. What has to be done to ensure that the resources is properly allocated. Today, we will be discussing the scenario of a use in search of a site. A use in search of a site. A use in search of a site is a situation where, as investors, the investor had already keyed into an aspect of the economy or real estate market. Real estate market in form of various sub-markets, and has decided on what use. Perhaps it could be maybe an investor decide to always embark on coastal developments, or development of mall, or development of hotel, or even development of apartment building, luxury homes, or it could be development of mass housing, affordable housing, right? All these are different uses, right? And these uses require suitable site, suitable location. Because without the site being appropriate, being suitable for the use, it will hinder the performance of the investment. So it's not every it's not every site that will be suitable for the particular use that the investor had concluded to embark upon. So what do? Where there is already an existing use, now searching for suitable location. The question of suitability of the site is very, very important. And this suitability of site calls for proper site identification. In this case, let's consider, for example, you have development plan or proposal to embark on mall development. Mall developments, that is, shopping mall, regional mall, they have their functional requirements. For any mall to be sited on any parcel of land, that land must have the potential to support the development of the mall. And take, for example, in terms of site identification for mall as a case, it then means that one, there must be accessibility, there must be centrality, and beyond that, there must be clear view. What do we mean by clear view here? We are talking about the shape and size of the land, allowing a clear view, having a very wide frontage that passers-by can easily be beckoned on to want to patronize the traders in the mall, so that it will start attracting shoppers. So these are some of the features, functional requirements of a suitable site for development of mall. It then means that while looking for site for development of more, in identifying that site, we must have this at the back of our mind. Just as for more, all other uses equally have their functional needs, their functional requirements that the site must meet. Some of these functional requirements could be economical for economical reasons, some could be physical, some could be legal. I give an example of legal. In Lagos, for example, some years back, I think well over, running to about 2 decades now, government policy was such that, and I think it's still operational, that if you have to do any banking development, you need minimum of 1,000 square meters. It then means that if there is a conception of an idea to do a bank building, then identifying the suitable site for such building, apart from all other locational factors, the attribute of the land is that it must not, in terms of size, must not be less than 1,000 square meters. So we should have this and know this and be able to identify a suitable site for a use in such of site. Now, how do we determine what site will be suitable? This is more of locational analysis of location, ensuring that the site we want to seek for the use is appropriate and suitable for that use. And the considerations involve the following. The first one out of it is what we call the demographical factors. This is where we have to consider the residents of that location, the socio-economic factor, the socio-economic attributes of the people there, right? And these socio-economic attributes is very important because it will determine, one, the kind of use that they desire, two, the functional requirements of that use, so that your use of the development will not be obsolete, and the capacity of the market to absorb the proposed use. So these demographic factors, in terms of their socio-economic attributes, is very, very important and must be considered while trying to identify a suitable site for use. Apart from these demographic factors, we equally have what we call radius analysis. Radius analysis. Again, maybe before I leave demographic factors, let me equally talk about the aspect of age and gender. But age, very important. For example, you want to cite a use. If we have an area where it's more of old people, the kind of use you cite in that place will not be as where you have more of young people. So age is equally very important, and we use age to pre-qualify when you want to assess demand under feasibility. Just as we use gender to pre-qualify your demand based on all these factors. So now, another important one is what we call radius analysis. What does radius analysis mean? What does it mean? Radius analysis allows us to analyze the location of the site relative to the development terrain in that neighborhood. We analyze the location of the site, assess the suitability of that site for the use that we have determined based on the development terrain, the neighborhood characteristics of the area. Without going too technical, let me just draw one or two examples. Years back, I think about more than 15, 16 years ago, I had cause to visit. We already had a use. That was the case of a use in search of a site. And we already had a use. And that use was bank building to develop a property for banking purpose. And in one of the northern states, I don't want to be specific now because of confidentiality, the bank has identified, the bank, not the bank per se, the bank consultant has identified a parcel of land and is proposing that parcel of land for our consideration in a turnkey project for the development for that bank. So when I visited the place, with simple radius analysis, My assessment was simply that that land was not suitable for the banking purpose, for the proposed use. And I will tell you why. Right? So, please don't go away. After this short break, I'll be giving you the details. Welcome back. Before we went on break, I was to discuss how my conclusion about the suitability or otherwise of the sites that was picked for bank building in one of the northern states, which we were to do years back. This discussion is under radius analysis, right? Radius analysis implies that relative to the particular location, we take a radius all around that particular location and review the development terrain, the neighborhood characteristics, and see how contradicting or complementary the development terrains are. Now, in that location, for sites, this particular site is sharing the left side with a gully. Well, that might not really be a serious threat. But again, just adjacent to this site, we have what we call a cemetery of a church. What that means is that cemetery is very, very rare for cemetery to change in use. For the use of a site that's already committed as cemetery to change because of maybe neighborhood developments. And how will a bank building be facing or be adjacent to a cemetery building? This I identify, and right in front is the church itself. So it then means that even when you talk about succession and filtrations, it can never affect these two permanent use, because it will be very, very rare. It's unthinkable to assume that the church will change its form or that the cemetery will be condemned for another use. And again, the site is gully. So within that axis, the next question is how many few meters down here, left and right of this axis, do we have bank? The answer is no. So I do my conclusion that yes, I know that neighborhood can regenerate. You can have succession and filtrations of use. But in this case, the chance is very, very rare. And of course, I could not even commit our capital into such development when I know that for now, the location is not bankable. So it puts questions on the bankability of that site. That's the question of a use in search of sites. We had the use for banking purpose to develop a building for banking use, but what I could see, as a surveyor and perhaps the man could not see it. So in this case, we could easily identify, right? Carrying out radius analysis, we could identify what potential use of a site will be and how the site will be a suitable one for the use that we already have to do. And again, let me give you another example for banking purpose. In this case, it's actually in southwest here, Chagamu there. I was to do a project for banking purpose. And when I got to the corridor, my bank already got an approval to have a branch in the town. So we were on search. I got to the corridor. I don't want to mention street name now. When I got to the corridor, I have about 2 or 3 sites to inspect. I was like, I'm asked for 1 or 2 banks. They said the banks were in another axis, along another axis. Okay, I drove down this corridor, trying to make my observations conforming or carrying out my radius analysis. There are a lot of calculations involved in radius analysis, but you can even do casual observation, right? Just to observe the terrain. But when we proceed in our future episode, we'll be talking about the processes of carrying out the calculation. So I observed this and I said, sorry, yes, as this is third road, as beautiful as this road is, there's not one single bank. And I don't think it should be right for me to be the first bank here. And that the fact that as at that time, no one single bank means that that location is not attractive to bank. Because as a matter of fact, during that period, you already have a corridor where you already have settlement of banks, not one, not two. So I asked them that I wanted to visit that house at that location. And we visited the place. And as we entered the corridor, before we started seeing banks, because of the intensity of commercial activities there, we have not even seen any bank at all. I said, if on this route I get a suitable land, I get a parcel of land, I will buy for my bank. And they said, well, this is the road we are going, that social bank is up there, the other bank is up there. Okay, fine. When we passed, we was looking ahead, seeing one or two banks. I saw one parcel of land. I said, this land, if it's available in the market, I will buy. You see, I'm laughing because incidentally I got that land. Just 2 months after, the land came into the market and I was contacted. And we were able to buy, and I was able to develop bank structure there and able to make our cool return. So, for every investor, even consultants, it's not enough to just say this is the land. You must make sure that the parcel of land you are recommending for the use is suitable. Suitability in economically, physically, and legally. Very, very important. Now, apart from radius analysis, okay, maybe before I go, I leave that, let's equally talk about, let's say you want to cite, very simple, you have an idea that you want to be doing hostel accommodation. You put hostel accommodation where there is no schools, no universities, no polytechnics. No, you won't do that. So the first thing is, what will be the racing deter? What will be the force of attraction? Right? Do you have university there? Yes, there is university. Then what is the nature of the students? What the capacity of that university in terms of students, and probably even the composition. These are things we have to consider, and that's when you are doing hostel. Let me give you another example. I had a parcel of land sometimes ago for sale, about 18 hectares, right? With registered title, and some people came. The first time they came, they said it's for shopping mall, and I said, shopping mall? This land, I was the one to sell, and I told them the land was not suitable for shopping mall. They said, no, they have been there with their white man, with that. I said, okay, no problem. They even came to my office for a meeting. We had a meeting and we discussed. And at the end of the day, they said they were going to do feasibility analysis. That was, at that point, I told my clients that they won't buy this land. Because I know if the feasibility analysis is properly done, and as they claim that the people will come from, abroad. I don't want to mention the name of the country because that may be like, when you do permutation, you might get to know this team that I'm actually talking about. That the people who come from abroad and they will do their feasibility and so on and so. I told my clients and I told my team that, well, these people will not buy this land because by the time they carry out the feasibility analysis will not support my project. And why? The land is big, is suitable, good terrain, but it does not have clear view. It's not along major road. We have access road almost around the site, but not major road. And when you talk about mall, you need to situate the suitable site must be along major road. There must be clear view, right? Frontage, clear frontage that will allow window display, that will allow the mall, the center to beckon on shoppers, so that even people on top of traffic will see it and can branch and patronize, right? So this is part of what we consider when you talk about identifying suitable sites. In case where you already have a use, an intended use, you have concluded on use. Now, apart from issue of radius analysis, now we equally need to consider the use capacity. When you have identified the location, after identifying the location, then the site itself, its capacity must be analyzed to ensure that is going to be able to support the proposed use. And in terms of legal implication, suitable site must equally be able to fulfill planning requirements. It might be in terms of size, commonly in terms of size anyway. The size must be adequate enough that the use will attract planning approval. And when we talk about use here, again, under planning approval, it must equally conform with the zoning, land use zoning. So it's not enough for the location to be economically suitable. It must be equally be legally feasible to support that project. So land use zoning, you have conceived an idea for mall. Is the site, even though it's along major road, is it going to be allowed for such purpose? Does development for mall, does it conform with the land use zoning of the land you have identified? Yes, in terms of radius analysis, it's a suitable location. But legally, in terms of getting approval, does it conform? People in Lagos will understand this, but most urban centers in Nigeria, you see a case where you have high brow, thorough roots axis, and they will still tell you that commercial use is not allowed, or the type of use you want to do is not allowed. So, why identifying that site, part of what will make it possible, what we must put in mind before you commit one penny to such site, is to identify that the use that we already have conforms with the zoning, the land use zoning of the site to be identified. So if it does not conform, it will be difficult, if not practically impossible, to achieve planning approval. Because on the basis of non-conformity of use, planning approval will be denied. So on that account, while searching for land, in case of a use in search of sites, we consider the demographical factors. All this is to assess the demand, to pre-qualify the demand, whether the demand in that area will support the intended use. This is number one. Number two is that we do radius analysis to be sure that the location is actually prime enough to support the use we want to do. There are some use that they are capable of attraction on their own. Those are special cases. For example, you want to cite university. University is an urban-oriented use, but does not necessarily have to be cited in urban centers. Because university is on its own, it's a racing data. It's something that can attract a lot. It's going to attract people, attract different other uses to that particular location. But where is a use that requires primeness, then we must make sure that the site identified in terms of radius analysis is prime enough for that use. And before we now leave this, before I bid you bye-bye for this episode, emphasis is on the zoning, land use zoning. The site to be identified the zoning must allow for the use that we are looking for that site for. That means the use must conform with the land use zoning of the site we have identified. So with this, then we would have been able to identify a site that will be suitable for the use we have to do, and we'll be able to allow us optimize our resources, our return, committing resources into it, and will be legally feasible for us to achieve this project. As we proceed, particularly when we get to feasibility, we'll be talking more about this and the processes of assessing all this so as to ensure that we have proper project initiation.